Hi guys, it's Konrad here, the CEO and lead strategist at The Creative Copywriter. And I wanted to talk you through the 13 lenses, which is a framework or methodology, if you will, that you can use in a very practical sense to analyze, optimize, and sharpen your copy and content into focus at every step of the funnel in pretty much every context. So I've basically tried to take what's in my brain and formalize it, mainly as a way for us as an agency to ensure quality assurance, essentially. When editing work and when we're delivering high volume of copy and content to clients as a growing agency, we need a way, we needed a way to make sure that everything is on point and ticking all the boxes. And there's so many different elements to copy and content, different types of copy and content you can create for different platforms. But I wanted to build a framework that kind of simplifies it in a way. And I call it the 13 lenses. And another way to think of these lenses is, or quite a nice way to think of them is ingredients in, let's say, the secret sauce of writing powerful copy and content. The reason why I mentioned this other analogy is because, when you're making a sauce, there are different ingredients that go in. You need to have the salt, the sweetness, the acidity, etc. But you need to get the balance right. Um, and it's important with these lenses as well that you get the balance right. You don't focus too much on any one particular lens, just in the same way that you wouldn't make that sauce overly salty or overly sweet. You want to get just the right amount of these ingredients in there in order to tick all the boxes and make sure that your copy and your content is doing what it's supposed to do. And without further ado even, I will crack on with the 13 lenses in no specific order. Let's see if it's actually working. There we go. So the first one is called the Goldfish Lens, and aptly named. When it comes to copy, and especially digital copy and content, you should be thinking of your readers as goldfish. The reason being is that our attention spans are being pulled left, right, and center at any one time. We're exposed to between 4,000 and 10,000 ads a day. It's pretty prolific out there. And think about how many pieces of content as well, how many teasers, how many social posts you scroll through every single day, how many different teasers to articles that you scroll past and occasionally click. Everyone is fighting for our attention, and every single person probably has a bunch of tabs open at any time. Let's say 10, 20 tabs if you're me. You've probably got a whole bunch of things on your to-do list, and we are busy people living in this busy modern world. So think of your readers as goldfish, or let's say think of them as having ADD like I have myself, because we have short attention spans, especially in the digital world, and everything and anyone and everyone is fighting for our attention. So if your content and copy isn't immediately digestible, then your prospects' minds will find any excuse to drift away from those words. So don't give them an excuse. And I'm going to drill into, a checklist of how we actually tangibly apply the Goldfish Lens. So when it comes to your copy and content, is your headline, title or subject line instantly clear and compelling, right? Don't, clarity trumps creativity. Make things clear and instantly clear. Are your paragraphs short and staggered in length? No more than 3 or 4 sentences per paragraph. Big chunky ones are harder for the eye to digest, especially when skimming or scanning. So if the eye, especially the eye of someone like me with ADD, sees a big chunky paragraphs, I won't even give it the time of day. I won't even attempt to read it because all the different words and sentences are pulling me in different directions. It's hard on the eye, and if anything is hard on the eye, you're just not going to bother. Next one, are your sentences short and sweet? Ideally 1 or 2 thoughts per sentence. Long sentences lose attention. For those of you who are currently studying in our academy, as you know, we call this the big chop, which is a very powerful technique and an important technique when writing digital copy. Is the line length of your page between 50 and 70 characters? This is for optimal readability. So a lot of designers don't even know this when they really should. Sometimes they'll just design things to look nice and they won't think about the fact that a sentence that has more than 70 characters in it, in that one line, sorry, not the sentence, in that one line, is again very difficult to read. Especially some of them just are way, way over length in terms of optimal readability. And, again, it's difficult on the eye. So in most cases, you're not going to grab and grip their attention. They're just going to, bugger off elsewhere, someone else online and click open one of those other tabs. Last point here, is the content or copy easy to skim and scan with subheaders and or bullet points? And maybe other design elements. They're so important, especially with long form content, but even with copy on a page, most people, or a lot of people at least, are skimming and scanning for the information that they want. So make it easy for them to do so. And the next lens we call the context lens. So context is king. The context lens is all about making sure that you understand and pay attention to the context in which your target reader is digesting those words. And by that, I mean 3 things. So number 1, what stage of awareness are they at when they encounter your copy? Are they unaware, problem aware, solution aware, product aware, or most aware? I won't go into too much detail there because I could talk for a whole hour just on stage of awareness. But if you don't know about it, Google stages of awareness, and there's lots of great content on that. Or if you are in our academy, of course, we dig into those stages in one of the courses. I can't remember which one. So that's number 1. Number 2, where are they physically consuming that content, offline or on? What are they likely to be doing when they consume it? Are they driving up the road past the billboard ad? Are they flicking through social quickly? Or are they reading a long form piece of content that they've committed to? And really what I'm getting at there is, are they in a rush or not? If they're in a rush, then long copy probably isn't going to work for them. You'll need something short and punchy. So think about that context of what they're up to and where are they physically and digitally consuming that content. And the third point here for the context lens is there anything happening in their lives that you should be paying attention to? What is the wider context? And a very clear, obvious case that will resonate with all of us is COVID, right? When COVID came along and beat up the world, a lot of things changed. And unfortunately, a lot of brands just sent out the same messaging, the same ads that they had been doing for years. Like we saw a lot of fashion brands, I won't name any names, that just took their stock photos or that let's say the photography shoot that they'd done the summer before and just popped those ads up when everyone was trapped in their houses, unable to leave. It was during lockdown, and they got a load of backlash for it, saying, why would we be out and about buying trainers now? What is that, to walk to the supermarket? And just the it wasn't sensitive to the wider global context. So the context lens, when we're talking about tangibles, first of all, do we know what stage of awareness our readers are at? As I said, are we using the right headline formula to resonate with and grip a prospect at that stage of awareness? So there, when you think about that stage of awareness, make sure the headline, is in tune with it, right? If they're unaware of even the problem that your solution solves, then you're not going to start with that headline. You're not going to have a headline that is promoting your value proposition, because they're not there yet. You need to educate them about the problem. You need to tap into the stage of awareness that they're currently at. And as I said, if you're part of our academy, we do dig into headlines that that are different headline formulas that have been built based on the stage of awareness of your prospect. Now, in what context or on what platform are they reading the copy? That's another one to think about that I mentioned. Is the prospect likely to be in a rush, as I said? And what day and time of day are they likely to consume this content is another thing to think about. And lastly, as I said, is there anything that may be happening in their life? Just consider all of these aspects. So, the Intrigue Lens, one of my faves. Now, the human brain is wired to be curious. It's probably one of the things that makes us human, in fact. I think that's where science comes from. That's where religion comes from. Basically, us trying to understand things, us being curious about the world around us. So, intrigue is a powerful copywriting tool, and almost necessary to use wherever you can to get people clicking and get people reading on, especially when it comes to headlines and titles. And to put that into more, tangible checklist. First of all, have we harnessed the power of the curiosity gap in our headline and or teaser copy? So a great example of the curiosity gap is perhaps the most famous copywriting headline by Max Sackheim almost 100 years ago now, which is, do you make these mistakes in English? So the word these, really, really powerful, right? And then using mistakes. The only way that someone reading that headline can close that gap in information, right, can understand what you're talking about, what are these mistakes, is by reading the copy, the body copy below. So a very powerful trick and technique that we've used for decades and still use today in digital marketing to grab attention and build a curiosity gap that people just feel completely compelled to close and finish and click through, which is, the name of the game and the aim of your copy in many cases. Have we tackled the topic in a unique way which will inherently arouse curiosity and compel them to read the piece? When it comes to blog posts, I think this is a great way to pull someone into a piece of content. Let's say you want to talk about some kind of SaaS software, um, or AI, right? And there's all kinds of content out there about AI. I'm just thinking of a particular headline here. What can Anthony Hopkins teach you about machine learning? That arouses curiosity because we've kind of placed two different things, like a celebrity with a completely distant and different topic, and by placing them together in a headline, you're immediately arousing curiosity, and you're creating something that's intriguing, and you can play on that in the article itself. Are there any cliffhangers to help keep readers glued to the end? So again, not just with the title. You don't just want the title to help get someone to click through. You need to keep selling the rest of that content, that page or that article, from the hook line into the first paragraph, etc. So try to leave cliffhangers. Try to build anticipation by saying, by the end of this article, you will know X, Y, and Z, or tell a story and don't close the story, don't finish the story, leave a gap, then get to the meat of your article, and then at the end close the gap in the story, and people will just feel compelled and intrigued so much by that cliffhanger that they'll want to keep reading, and it's just a way to keep them gripped, which is what we want to do. And I just talked about this. Are we building anticipation, by explaining the value that they'll get by the end? For example, the more and more you read of this article, the more you'll feel the knowledge seeping in about this particular subject. So build that anticipation. Have we included any intriguingly specific stats? So there's all kinds of stats. Data and stats are brilliant for supporting points, but even more, to make them intriguing, go super specific. Super specificity can be very, very intriguing. Let's say on a landing page, rather than, our tool helps you save time and money, for example, so that you can focus on what really counts, your business. That's such a bog standard, overused B2B copywriting line right there. Not terrible, but overused. So you can then why not drill into a specific stat, you know, our tool saves you 23 hours and 42 minutes per month, immediately that makes it more tangible and it makes it intriguingly tangible. If I'm reading that, I'm thinking, oh, hang on, why so specific? 23 hours and 42 minutes. There must be a story behind that. There must be some kind of use case, some case study that I can read. You know, they must have done their maths, they must have done their research. So again, it changes from like an overused cliche to something super specific and very intriguing. And that's the Intrigue Lens. Right, the outside in lens. I've been talking about outside in thinking for many years. By this, I mean that the best content strategies and highest converting copy, and to be honest, best marketing and business decisions in general are built on the needs, desires, and pains of the people we are targeting. So, not just on what we think will resonate. By that, I mean they are, you know, it's not inside out. It's not a case of me thinking, oh, I've got a great idea for what's going to work for this marketing campaign, or I've got a great idea for what's going to work for this entire business. Rather than that, you are basing your decisions on their demand-led decisions rather than assumption-led decisions. So you're working out what are the needs of the target customers. And what we're trying to do is really get into the heads of those customers. And the way that we do that is through data collection, implicit and explicit data collection, you know, by listening to and observing the audience. So not just going, yeah, I know this, what copy is going to be great. Actually talking, if you're a copywriter, talking to the customers of your customer and you know, gathering that data that's really, really important and will really help you make the right decisions. So let's make it more tangible. Is this content based on insights, not just assumptions? That's a great question to ask. You know, if you're a copywriter, you might need to ask and talk to the marketing team of the company that you're working with and say, have you got any data? Have you got any transcribed interviews? Or can I jump on calls with you know, with some of your buyers and talk to them myself and record that and then get that information? Or can we send a survey out to all of your customers? So there's this thing called voice of customer data, which is really, really cool. When you get to that next advanced level of copywriting, you want to try to weave voice of customer data into your copy. And by that, I mean the actual words and phrases used by actual customers and prospects that you're trying to engage and convert. How do you get that information? Through, well, here we go. I'm jumping ahead there. Through, you know, surveys, like I said, interviews, surveys, focus groups. You might be doing it yourself with the client. Marketers themselves should be doing this kind of research. And, you know, if you transcribe interviews or if you send surveys and there are gap fills, you can gather words and phrases that, and you can see commonalities across the board, whereby, you know, these prospects that you're trying to convert, they're saying things in a certain way. And, you know, it might be said in such a way that you go, hold up, I can use that exact phrase and that can be the headline on my page. I couldn't have described that better myself. And you know it's going to resonate because it's coming literally from the mouths of the type of people that you're trying to convert. Or there might be a word, a way of describing something, an adjectives that keeps cropping up. And, you know, lots of the prospects, lots of the customers are using that word. So use that word. That's the word that how people are describing it. So use it. And like I said, you know it's going to resonate. Have we done any keyword research to understand what prospects are searching for or discovered the questions they're typing in? So again, you know, this isn't usually a copywriter's job, but it's a copywriter's job to ask, is there keyword research? Is there any data there that we can use? Any voice of customer data? And as I said, have we injected any of those insights from the interviews and surveys? And a key one here is, you know, are we really focused on customer benefits, not just features? This is outside in approach. Do we paint a picture of those benefits and help our prospects imagine the rewards? Are we really thinking about the prospect and not just the brand and what we're trying to sell? Next up, Another one of my absolute favorites, the Zig-Zag Lens. So it's an interesting one. I mean, content saturation is a very real and palpable problem out there in the webosphere. In most industries, companies just copy the front runner, and the internet is just packed full of copycats and lookalikes and sound-alikes. I think companies say, "Oh, look at Apple, they're doing it great. Let's have their tone of voice." And the amount of times we get companies coming to us asking us to create a tone of voice for them, but they want it to be like Apple. If I had a penny for every time they did that, I'd be a rich man. The problem is, what's the point in copying the front runner? It's working for them, great, but they've got all the market share. So you don't just want to copy, you don't want to be a copycat, because then you run the risk of just getting washed up in that sea of sound alikes. It's all about differentiating. Why should prospects choose you if you sound exactly like everyone else in your industry? Why should they read your content? Why should they remember it? Why should they bookmark your content? Why should they share it with their friends and colleagues if you just sound exactly the same, or you're saying, the topics are just angled in exactly the same way? So we want to beat content saturation by zigzagging, by zigging while the industry zags. Here are some of the things you should think about. Have we, or the company you're working with, done competitor analysis to understand their USPs, their tones of voice, the strengths, weaknesses, styles, formats, lengths, etc., of their competitors and the industry in general? That's the first way. In order to zig while the industry zags, you need to understand what that zagging is. What are the commonalities across the industry? Once you've done that competitor analysis, you can start differentiating. You can kind of understand where's the gap that you fit into as a brand, or as a brand that you're working with if you're a freelance copywriter. Is the angle, approach, or perspective of your piece of content unique? If it's content, do you have any other differentiators? For example, unique design style, unique format, unique tone of voice. Again, if you're a copywriter, you might mainly look at tone of voice, but if you're a content strategist, then you should be looking beyond just voice and words and copy. You should be looking at unique design style. You should be looking at unique format. You should be looking at all kinds of ways to differentiate that content. Are these differentiators consistent across other bits of content? So consistency is key too, right? If you're going to work as a content strategist with a client, or if you are a content strategist working in a company, in a brand, and you're going through this process of differentiation after having done a competitor analysis, try to make ones that can be consistent. Don't just go, oh, there's one blog post, let's start with a storytelling intro because no one's doing storytelling in our industry. Why not go, right, let's start every single blog post with a little short story. Suddenly you become the guys that are the ones telling the stories in the industry, and people remember you. They remember that consistently unique factor. A great example that I always give is Bernadette Jiwa's blog, The Story of Telling, which is in our sphere, it's in the branding world. Again, in the branding world and the marketing world, most content is long form, listicles, how-tos, etc. But Bernadette G has done this really cool thing where every single blog post is only about 50 to 150 words, and it's just a short story where you can get one key, useful, valuable lesson. So it's really consistent with her brand, right? She is a brand storyteller. But it's unique, and it's consistently unique, and it's refreshingly different to the rest of the industry. So again, the way that you're going to find these differentiators as a content strategist is by looking at what's going on in the industry, find those commonalities, and then make some bold choices. It will work very well for you. And the last point here, so for copy and bottom funnel content, are the benefits with pushing truly unique and compelling. So this is now moving over to the copywriting side of things. As I said, the 13 lenses apply to both copy and content. So here, when it comes to trying to convert people at the bottom of the funnel, are you picking benefits for your brand or the brand you're working with that all of their competitors are saying? Is it the same? Because the likelihood is that that prospect you're trying to convert in that drip sequence or on that landing page or on that website, the likelihood is that they're also looking at several other competitors. So yes, benefits are more important than features. Great, pull out those benefits, but are they unique benefits? Are they unique selling propositions, USPs? And you need to drill into those with your brand. What's that unique value proposition? Not just value proposition. What are those unique selling points or unique selling propositions that you can focus on, so that if they are comparing 3 to 5 other competitors, those jump out at them. So zig while the industry zags, ladies and gentlemen. Next up, we have the action lens, previously called the funnel lens, which is why we've got a picture of a funnel there. So I apologize if you're thinking, what the heck is that old funnel doing there next to the action lens? I'm sure we will update the imagery at some point. Now, the action lens is, well, let me start with this. Marketing is all about selling the next step, or at least good marketing is all about selling the next step. Too many companies try to propose on their first date, right? They just try to sell. It's like, yeah, going on Tinder, hitting someone up on Tinder and saying, will you marry me? They're not ready to get married, right? You need to take them on several steps before you can pop the question with any likelihood of them saying yes. So it's the same with marketing. So it's important to understand the marketing funnel if you're a copywriter. Usually, I mean, every word should count, right? Whether it's copy or content, it's always there to serve a purpose. You shouldn't just be posting content for content's sake. There's too much of that. There's too much fluff. Those words are there for a reason. And as copywriters, it's important to understand what that reason is and what the next step in the funnel is. Even if we're writing top funnel blog posts, which are usually educational and value driven, right? They shouldn't be salesy usually. It's purely there to give value. But on that page, there should be a CTA somewhere, right? And usually, if you're doing content marketing right, it's a call to action to pull them towards another piece of content, right? And that could be a gated piece of content. That might be mid-funnel gated piece of content where that prospect, that reader needs to exchange their name and email address. There's a value exchange there in order to get that meaty piece of content. Either way, there should be some kind of next step. A blog post shouldn't just go up just as a brand awareness piece, just, because people will read and go, that's great, I got some value, and disappear, never to be seen again. Lots of people will do that anyway, but if you can grab a small percentage of those readers and push them down the funnel and make them, and think about that action, that act that you want them, what is that call to action that you want them to do? Probably not pick up the phone and buy your services at that point if it's top funnel, but there should always be something. And let's try and put that into a bit of a more tangible kind of checklist. So the action lens, is there a strong and relevant CTA? Again, on a landing page, on a conversion copy landing page, this will be much more prominent perhaps than a blog post. But always think of the CTA. Is that CTA, is that call to action taking them to the correct next step, or is it jumping too far down the funnel? As I said, don't propose on the first date. As a copywriter, especially if you're heading towards the content strategy side of things, then you should be asking and challenging and questioning what that next step is, because lots of marketers don't get it right. So if you really understand it, you should question it and go, hang on, I don't think that's right. Maybe we should be asking them to do this instead. Are we using conversion copywriting techniques? So this is when it comes to landing pages, if we are trying to convert them, there are all kinds of techniques. If you're part of the academy, we are teaching you lots of these techniques. So, sense of urgency. Have we built up a sense of urgency and a sense of scarcity to really make them feel like they should act now? FOMO is a powerful thing, right? Fear of missing out. And sense of urgency and sense of scarcity kind of both play into that. As humans, we really don't want to miss out on anything. So if you tell them this deal is expiring in, 1 day or 60 minutes or by the end of the week, or, we've only got 5 chairs left at this event, 5 seats left, that sense of FOMO, fear of missing out, will be very powerful in helping to convert your prospect. Of course, social proof is another really important, powerful one here. Humans follow trends. They have shortcuts. We don't have time to think of uh, work out every possible scenario or feature or look at all the functions, etc. So often we'll go with our gut, and that's often driven by what other people think. I don't know if this is going to be a right fit for me, but if people that I know or trust or people in my industry say that's great, and there are testimonials and or there are 3 million people using that tool, I'm much more likely to use it. I always say, which restaurant are you most likely to go? Two Italian restaurants next to each other. One's empty, one is thriving and full of people. Which one are you more likely to go into? Obviously, the one with people in it. It might have worse food, actually. The other one might be new, but the social proof helps you to make that call. So, have you done enough to remove barriers and build trust? By presenting yourself as a credible authority is important. Understanding the barriers and objections of prospects is really helpful when it comes to writing conversion copy, and building a content strategy that will push people towards that conversion at the end, whatever it is, that sale. If you know that people are umming and ahhing about the price, and you've got that feedback because you've taken an outside-in approach, you've got the data, and you realize that one of the reasons people aren't buying is because they're not quite sure about the price, then tackle that head on, right? Have a landing page or an email, or work it into that landing page, price versus value. You might say something like, you might think this is expensive. That's because it is expensive, but there's a reason for that. Tackle it, preempt the barrier, explain why it's more expensive, because they get more value for money. You get what you buy, you get what you pay for. So there's a way to tackle barriers, and if you know them, you can try to remove them en route to that call to action at the end. Have we made sure any persuasive copy? So this is kind of like don't what I'm trying to say is, don't go too far with everything we said. So have we made sure any persuasive copy doesn't make us sound like a car salesman? Get the balance right. Don't sound like a 90s car salesman from the US. Use all of these techniques subtly, because people can smell salesmanship a mile off, and it rubs people up the wrong way. So you want to use these techniques within reason and subtly. Like I said, all of these lenses need to be balanced. Let's get on to, does the content have a solid promotion strategy in place? So that comes more down to content strategy, not something you necessarily have to think about as a copywriter. Let's go to the Real Talk lens. I mean, as a copywriter, you should know this already. It's perhaps the oldest trick in the copywriting handbook. Conversational copy has proven to get results time and time again since the dawn of age, since the dawn of copywriting existing. Conversational copy works because we are social creatures. People buy from people. Your customers don't want dull corporate talk, even if they're in a dull corporate job. Even if or let's say they're technicians, they're developers, and you're selling them some kind of intricate software. Yes, they want to have the detail there. It needs to be detail rich. The value needs to be there, and we'll get to that. But turn it, make it digestible and detail rich at the same time. Use conversational copy. Talk to them in the way that they would talk to a friend, a colleague, a family member. Within reason, you can be conversational but professional at the same time. So a good litmus test here is, would you talk like that at home? Or would you talk like that with your mates down the pub? If not, perhaps you should review the copy and start removing the jargon and cliches that you may have put in there without thinking. So let's go to the checklist. Are we talking directly to the reader with the words you and your? So important. Are we asking questions to engage and include the reader as we would in a normal spoken conversation? Questions are a great way, but don't overdo it. Again, don't sound like a car salesman. Weave them in as you would in a normal chat. For brand copy, are we admitting weakness and turning it into a strength? This is a very powerful technique. Avis famously did it with their campaign. You know, we're number 2 at rent-a-cars, so we try harder. Are we steering clear of cliches and industry jargon? Does the flow feel like someone is talking? Try reading the copy out loud to check. Really good tip there. And let's move on. So the Primal brain lens. Now, let me talk about Primal brain. So basically, humans, in simple terms, I guess our brains can be broken down into 2 main parts. And hopefully there aren't any neuroscientists listening, because they probably have something to say. There's the primal part, which is in control of our instincts and emotions, and the rational part, which governs higher level cognitive processes and rational thought. So while we are, of course, rational beings, the primal brain processes simply work faster. So, for example, if a tiger's running at you, you know, you don't have time to weigh up the pros and cons of being eaten alive or how sharp their teeth are. You know, you're just going to think shit and run, and it's going to happen instinctively. So tapping into raw gut instincts and emotions wherever possible will help you quickly grab attention and influence decision making, and is very good for, like I said, grabbing people's attention when there's so many distractions on the go. So let's go to the checklist. Have you connected with how your reader is currently feeling? You know, tap into those powerful emotions like love, nostalgia, sadness, regret, etc. Have you communicated how that product, service, or piece of content will make them feel? Don't just think about, you know, benefits, think about emotional benefits, even in the B2B world. Have you used sensory words like stink, bitter, silky, and shiny? So this is a really cool trick, is to, you know, use words that are sensory. And again, if you look at these words, I don't know if you can tell, but it connects to our brain quicker, right? Because we instantly think of the smell or the touch or how something looks. And, you know, you can replace adjectives that are just normal adjectives with sensory adjectives and immediately grab more attention and tap into that primal brain. Another one here is onomatopoeic words like pop, bang, and sizzle. You know, think about so often this is referred to as the reptilian brain, right? The reptile brain. If there was a reptile in front of you, how would you grab their attention? You know, probably with loud pops and bangs and sizzles and things like that. So try to do the same with your prospects, with those readers. And a really one I want to drill into, perhaps the strongest primal instinct, is fear. So, you know, we call this the fear factor. One of the most famous headlines that we mentioned before is, do you make these mistakes in English? So that not only taps into the curiosity gap and intrigue, but it's also got the fear factor there. You know, you can often flip a positive headline round into a negative one. You know, for example, how to make your website copy better could be a positive spin for an article headline. That could be flipped into, you know, 12 mistakes you're making, or 12 reasons why your website copy stinks. And there we've used a sensory word and we've used the fear factor at the same time. That's immediately more compelling and more clickable than how to make your website copy better. Let's go to the SEO lens. This is one that only really applies if you are writing copy or content that is open for public viewing. Okay, so that the search engines can actually find it. And SEO is a careful balancing act these days. There are certain techniques that we as copywriters should abide by in order to please the search engines as well as our prospects. But what I always say is, write for the reader first, the search engine second. Search engines are changing. Google has gone through many famous algorithms over the years. And it's heading more and more into a more human place, whereby, you know, just writing good, engaging, natural content works well for SEO. However, there are other things that you should pay attention to, such as, have we used the primary and secondary keywords within the text in a natural way, i.e. without stuffing too many keywords in there, which you'll get penalized for? Is the primary keyword in the first paragraph? Is it in the title? I probably have added here. Yeah, it is. If it's an SEO driven article or landing page, is the exact keyword phrase in the H1 header, so in the title? And are the H2 headers relevant to the topic too? So, you know, you want to have a similar keyword in those subtitles that you have throughout your post. Do the images have alt descriptions closely connected to the primary keyword, but not the same? So again, this might be the marketing manager's job, but if you want to give some advice, some SEO advice, and you've got images in that article, then you want to make sure that the keyword is in the alt description. Are we interlinking between articles in a natural and helpful way? Think Wikipedia, right? When you read any Wikipedia article, there's so many interlinks. You know, you're reading something, you want to learn something about some guy, you click through and there's a whole page on him. So when it comes to content strategy and SEO content strategy, interlinking between posts on a brand's blog is really, really powerful and useful. And also link out as well. Link out to other valuable articles. Don't be greedy. Links out provide value, and they're good for SEO. And lastly, do we have a meta description and meta title, both containing the exact keyword phrase? Right, almost there. We've now got to the hierarchy lens. Well, let me explain. So, you know, you can have the most perfectly written copy that hits all the right notes, but if the message hierarchy is wrong, you can easily lose your readers. And if it doesn't quite make sense, you can stuff up there. So it's important to take your readers on a carefully mapped out journey, whether they're reading a homepage, a landing page, an about page, or an article, or a report, or a white paper. Think about the logical steps that reader needs to be taken on to be fed the information and the value that you're feeding them. So when it comes to especially a landing page, we've got this thing called expectation matching. So you want in the top 10% of the piece of content to match their expectations, i.e. does the copy of content match what the reader was expecting to read? This is very important if you've got pay-per-click advertising and they've clicked on an ad, right? Whether it's in Google or via social media, and there's been some copy on that ad. You want the copy on the top of your landing page to marry up with it. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but there should be a strong connection. Because if they click on an ad thinking they're going to read something about whatever you've described it as, and then in that top 10% of the page they land on, it doesn't match up, it's very likely for them there'll be this dissonance there, and they'll think, hang on, this isn't what I was looking for, and I will bounce. And again, you only have 6 seconds to really grip them and get them to continue reading. Most people bounce in those first 6 seconds. So really important to expectation match. When it comes to conversion copy landing pages, if we're really trying to convert someone, are we following a proven framework such as PASS or AIDA? So PASS, problem, agitation, solution. I don't have time to go into these in detail, but you can Google them, and there are proven formulas that work when it comes to taking people on a journey and converting them. So use those proven formulas. If you're telling a story, if you're doing storytelling, is there a beginning, middle, and an end? What is the story arc? Follow a structure. When listening to benefits, are the most important benefits at the top? If you've done some data and an outside-in approach, you'll know which are the most important benefits. So when you have a bullet point list, put the most important ones at the top. And are we answering questions in the order that a prospect would need them answered? Okay, brand lens. So the brand lens is all about, remaining on brand, and really important to be consistent. If you look like a duck but swim like a dog, you'll lose your prospect's trust. So, your content or copy, whatever you're writing for that brand, needs to be consistent with all the copy and content. It has to be cohesive and consistent. So, the questions you should be asking is your voice consistent with the rest of the marketing collateral? Is it in line with the brand voice guidelines? You know, does it feel right? Are we using American or British English? Are there any language requirements that you know, should be consistent, that you should follow? Are there any brand voice nuances that we should consider, like a slightly different brand voice for B2B or B2C sector or departments of that brand? Are there any words or phrases we should be including or excluding, which you might find in brand voice guidelines? And is our key messaging the same as elsewhere in our marketing collateral? So beyond just the voice, are we describing those benefits in the same way? There needs to be consistency there. Okay, the value lens, also an important one. Humans beings are selfish. That includes you, that includes me. You know, the question marketers and copywriters should always be asking is, what's in it for them? Why should our readers, our prospects, give a crap? You know, it's a very, very great question to ask at any and every stage. Always think about the true value that they're going to get. So, are you turning the product or service features into tangible, relatable benefits for the reader? Back to benefits there. For blog posts and other top funnel content, does it solve a real problem? Is it just fluffy content created for the sake of it? And do they steer clear of self-promotion? You know, don't be salesy, be valuable at that point in the funnel. Does your content or copy teach the reader something? Does it offer knowledge they might struggle to find elsewhere? Have we made sure to trim out that unnecessary fluff? Do you address the reader's pain points in your copy? You'll know this all from your outside-in approach. And that's it for the value lens. And last but not least, we have the creative spark lens. So copywriting can make use of all the formulas and techniques in the world, but you know, if you're lacking in creativity, you can run the risk of becoming bland, even if you're clear, on point, benefit led, etc. So, but I will add that clarity does trump creativity. Don't go creative at the expense of being clear. And that happens a lot with newbie copywriters, we find. But you know, a healthy injection of creativity can really help to grip readers, which is crucial. I'll quickly run through this because I've got a dash. Are we using any storytelling to draw in the reader? Are there any metaphors, analogies, and similes to make the content tap, dance, and sing, and to make tough technical concepts more digestible? Have we tackled the topic in a refreshingly unusual way? Have we used any poetic devices like alliteration, personification, repetition, or wordplay? Are you tying up extras creatively, such as call to action, subheaders, menu items, autoresponder copy, and thank you pages? And that is the creative spark lens. Weave it in. And there you have it. Those are the 13 lenses. Remember to get the balance right. If you want more information, we will provide a link and you can actually get your hands on this deck here. Happy to share. Thanks, guys.